recipient Ed Boon. When I began preparing this introduction, the first challenge that came up was, what exactly to call Ed? Is he a game designer, creative director, programmer, franchise manager, studio head, co-creator of a global franchise that has spanned 3 decades? Ed is all of these, and he embodies the best of what each of these roles can be. I've known Ed since 1991, the year I started working at Midway Games in Chicago, fresh out of college. It was an amazing opportunity to work with and learn from the great game designers like Ed, along with other industry icons like Eugene Jarvis, Mark Turmel, George Gomez, and George Petro. I don't know that any of us would have predicted that 30 years later, Mortal Kombat would have given rise to over 20 releases across the Mortal Kombat and Injustice series, to 3 movies, comics, novels, countless toys and action figures, an animated series, and a live stage tour. As I further reflected on 3 decades of knowing and working with Ed, I remembered a quote from movie director Guillermo del Toro about creative people who can concentrate all their energy into a singular project. He talks about a champion who lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes a project into existence using all their passion, creativity, and obsession. That is Ed, a champion who lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes something into existence. He's a hands-on creative director who's close to the craft and close to his team. The identity of Ed's career is forever linked to Mortal Kombat, but his work on games started before that. He wrote code for many pinball games, including classics like F-14 Tomcat and Black Knight. He worked with Eugene Jarvis on the high-impact football arcade game series. And he is the voice of Rudy, the ventriloquist puppet from the pinball game Funhouse, and of course, the voice of Scorpion, commanding you to get over here. What a journey to go from working on pinball games with red LED displays to creating one of the defining games of the video arcade boom of the early 90s and continuing that work into the era of modern consoles. Throughout his career, one thing about Ed has always stayed with me, and it's something I personally still reflect on often, and that is his ability to avoid distractions and focus on what's important. I can still picture Ed sitting in his office when he first told me the wisdom, we have to give our bosses what they need, which isn't always the same thing as what they want. And our CEO during the early days of Mortal Kombat told me once that that's what makes Ed great, his singularity of purpose. And that's a principle and a lesson that I'm thankful to have learned from Ed. Tonight's award is the Hall of Fame. But if there were a Hall of Humility, I would nominate Ed for that as well. As Ed... As many know, Ed is one of the most genuinely humble people I've ever worked with. I was lucky enough to work at Midway when the very first Mortal Kombat machine went out on test in Chicago, and also lucky enough to have Ed as a friend and an ally during very challenging times. Game designer, creative director, studio head, mentor, and friend. Let's take a look at Ed's accomplishments over the last 3 decades.
Let us dance.
Ed Boon grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, playing pinball and video games during the arcade explosion. After graduating from the University of Illinois with a degree in math and computer science, Ed started working at Williams Electronics, programming pinball machines.
He quickly kind of shifted into the video game side, and so we immediately became kind of partners and friends.
By the end of Super High Impact, it was obvious Ed could do anything. After 2 years of pinball and 2 years of video, he was ready to move on.
After the Williams video department was rebranded Midway Games, Ed teamed up with artist John Tobias to begin prototyping the company's first fighting game. Taking advantage of Midway's digitized graphics technology, Ed and John captured the movements of real martial artists to achieve state-of-the-art visuals and animations. The result was a fast-paced, hyper-violent fighter they called Mortal Kombat.
Every week there was a new character, some kind of a new move.
I think it really changed the boundaries of what people expected of a game. Really, any genre, it really pushed those boundaries.
A year later, the highly anticipated home versions of Mortal Kombat were released on Mortal Monday, which became one of the biggest launches in video game history.
The visuals kept getting better. Ed kept pushing the limits, and it kept working over and over, and it just kept getting better and better.
In 1995, New Line Cinema released a movie adaptation of Mortal Kombat that enjoyed the second biggest August opening of any movie before it.
Ed and I got to visit the set of the first Mortal Kombat film. It was a surreal experience. I mean, to know that something we were responsible for creating actually made its way to an industry that we both admired was incredible.
The Mortal Kombat team grew with each game, eventually joining Warner Brothers Games in 2009 as the rebranded NetherRealm Studios. After 2011's Mortal Kombat game, Ed and NetherRealm embraced the DC universe.
And Ed immediately had that as part of our plan of like, the next game, we can make that a game of its own and really make it shine in its own way, and that became the Injustice franchise.
And it was just interesting talking to him about his passion for the game, his passion for the DC universe. It was very palpable. It was super articulate, funny, engaging. I know it probably came from a place of passion for Ed. He loves DC, and he wanted to make a game that featured all the cool characters and villains that he loved.
Injustice also spawned a wildly successful comic book series, as well as its own animated feature movie.
There were a lot of conference calls prior to promoting the game, and a lot of people mentioned Ed Boon this, Ed Boon that. And so when I actually met Ed, I was a little surprised at how understated he was. He was soft-spoken, gentle even. He was very kind, and I was really taken aback by that because I didn't expect it at first.
Working with Ed for nearly 20 years has been great, growing the franchise under his visions. So whether that's taking the game and adding more depth of story, where we basically are making a full-length animated movie with every game we make, branching out to comic books, branching out to further movies. Ed's always had a vision for those things and been very committed and dedicated to the quality level of all of those and innovating every time.
Working with Ed, I learned the power of passion, and creativity, and focus in game design.
Ed is always watching. He's always listening. He'll go toe-to-toe on Twitter or tweet on Twitter with the best of them.
The Mortal Kombat phenomenon continues to this day, with the most recent titles being the highest selling of the entire series, with 35 years of game making and countless awards, making his mark across multiple entertainment industries. Tonight we honor Ed Boon as this year's inductee into the AIAS Hall of Fame.
It is my honor to present this year's Hall of Fame award to Ed Boon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt Booty, for that wonderful introduction. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you to the Academy for this honor. Looking back over 35 years of making games, I think it's impossible to thank everybody I'm indebted to. Well, what has become crystal clear is I've had an undeniable streak of luck, fortunate events that have happened to me. It honestly feels like I've won the lottery like 4 times. My first lottery ticket I won in the form of an asterisk. I made my one resume in my entire life at age 21. It was very generic, but at the bottom, I put an asterisk in the words, a strong interest in video games. It was a comment that was there only because I was told to include personal hobbies. And I always assumed that after graduating, I'd just get a real job. By some stroke of luck, a headhunter noticed the asterisk in my vanilla resume, and for some reason decided to forward it to Williams Electronics in Chicago. That decision opened a giant door into games that I can't imagine the direction my life would have gone had that headhunter not, swiped left. Left is a bad thing, right? I was curious. I can't possibly overstate. The second lottery ticket I won was meeting and working with Eugene Jarvis. I can't possibly overstate the influence Eugene, along with Larry DeMar, has had on me. From playing his games as a teenager to eventually working together on both pinball and video games, Eugene was the mad scientist that all of us at Midway wanted to emulate. My third lottery win, was meeting the brilliant John Tobias, who co-created Mortal Kombat with me. I honestly can't believe my luck. I just happened to get an office next to John and another talented artist named John Vogel, together with an amazing audio engineer and composer, Dan Forden. We made Midway's first fighting game in 8 months, and it's still kicking 30 years later. Mortal Kombat was made along with a string of Midway hits, including Narc, Terminator 2, NBA Jam, games made by my good friends, several of which are here today: Mark Trammell, Sal DeVita, George Petro, Eugene Jarvis, and of course, John Tobias. I want to thank you guys and all the Midway alum here for your support. We really got to get together and get a picture tonight. I'm serious. My fourth lottery ticket is working with my colleagues at NetherRealm. I cannot begin to express my admiration, gratitude, and respect for everyone on our studio. 30 years ago, the first Mortal Kombat game consisted of 4 members. And with me being the only programmer, I could tell people, yeah, I'm the best programmer on the team, right? Our studio now is over 200 team members, each of which does their job better than I could possibly do it. Quite frankly, I feel I've been standing on the shoulders of them for over a decade now. The fact that there's so many of them here tonight is just incredible. Indulge me, please. These include our directors, Sean Hemrick, Steve Barron, Joe Berger, Graham Bayless, Rich Carl, as well as some of our superstars, Paul, Josh, Dominic, Tiago, Taryn, Tony, Mike, Brian, Derek. You guys are great. I can't believe you guys all flew out to share this with me. This award belongs to you as much as it does me, and I'm going to keep it in our studio to share with us. Actually, I shouldn't lie. I'm going to take it home with me. Thank you to everyone at Warner Brothers for their amazing support over the past 12 years. We really appreciate the freedom, resources, and trust that you've given our studio, as well as an unbelievable marketing, PR, and sales support. David, Remy, Kehao, Brian, Rigo, you've really elevated our games to new heights we didn't think we could reach. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you to the fans of our games. None of what we do works without you. And finally, thanks to Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, everyone out there making games. Each great game that is released raises the bar and inspires us all to keep moving our medium moving forward. Let's keep it going. Thank you very much.
Welcome back our hosts, Jessica Chobot and Greg Miller.